Sunday night at the London Palladium. It's time for a Yamaha. A Yamaha, quite exotic one, LL11, but it has another name, LM2242222. I love it when you can make them vibrate with your voice. Sorry about that. Yeah, so Andy's Yamaha, lovely old thing, sweet sounding, in really good all-round nick for its age. I'm not quite sure how old it is, but it's in good shape. And it's come to me for basically a setup with action reduction, and there is room for it here in this saddle, which is great. We got an action at the end here of 3.25 on the high E and 4.2 on the low E, so there's plenty of room for reduction there. And I think improvement is certainly going to be that thing, tusk nut there. So to start off with, I obviously matched up the E to E spacings to get the closest, excuse me, my hand's in the way, get the closest possible fitting nut we can. It's not hard exactly, but it's a bit of a faff trying to find matching tusk nuts, because there's so many guitar models obviously, and you just won't find one for every model, so you have to get close, and then you have to be prepared to do a little bit of moving around, pushing, sanding and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by fitting. No, I shouldn't have done that, really, should I? Let's do the gross variable first in the action. So the gross variable when changing the playing action. Gross variable is the big one up here that we're going to do. The biggest one, we'll change the biggest one first. So that's going to be a reduction down there. So the thing I want to do first is look up to the board, and we're going to do my very unclever working out thing. So I know for me what is a low action. So on the low E we've got 4.2, and the high E we've got 3.25. Now I know that on the low E I might go to 1.75 as a nice improvement, and here I might go to, let's call it 2.2, something like that. And what we'll see is what reduction that involves. So, and this is where actually using a calculator is always good, because I sometimes get this wrong, and you just can't afford to get it wrong. So calculator, where's it gone there? So 3.25 minus 1.75 is a reduction of 1.5 at this end on the treble at the last fret, and then 4.2 minus 2.2 equals 2, just be on the safe side, so it's 2 off that end. Okay, so that's a little bit different. I mean, it's not equal all the way across, but that's okay. Now here's the next thing. So we're talking about height, reduction of height at the last fret, and what we know is we have to calculate what we're going to remove from the saddle if we want that, and it's a 1.5 approximately. Is it 1.5 or is it 1. Let's call it a 1.4 factor, so times it by 1.4. Actually it's 1.42, it's 142%. Anyway, 1.4. So I go 1.5 times 1.4, and that tells me what I can or need to remove at the saddle itself. So 2.1 is the physical reduction I would want to do there, and then on this side 2.0 times 1.4 is 2.8, and so it would be 2.8 on that one there, and that would give me a 2 millimeters reduction as measured here, and a 1.5 millimeters reduction as measured there. So 2.1 and 2.8, that's quite a big thing. So the question becomes, how do you do it? Well, I recommend, as always, we do it in 2 stages. So let me divide it into 2 stages. How would we do this? Let's draw out something, as always. So if I draw out the saddle, right, we're going to go, here's the saddle, and we're going to go measurement at this end, and we're going to go measurement at the treble end, treble and bass. So if we divide it by 2, we're going to take out a total of 2.1. So the first stage is going to be, what should we do it as? We'll do it half. So first one is going to be, first stage is going to be 0.5, half of 2.1, 0. No, not point, it's 1.05. So the first stage is 1.05. Second stage is a total of 2.1. First stage down here is a total of 1. And the second stage is a total of, 1.4. It's not 1. Got to look at the right number. 1.4. And the second one is 2.8. So those are my 2 stages. Now, what we don't know yet is how to measure that on the saddle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slack off the strings. Now we do hope the strings will last long enough to do the setup. It's always handy when they do. Wrong way. So we want to slack them off far enough to get the saddle out, but hopefully, if we can, keep the strings still on board in. We'll leave the nut in place for a minute. Okay, so what I've done is I've calculated the biggest maximum amount that I would ever do on a guitar like this. And of course the one question we've got, or the one consideration we have to take at all times, is will the break angle of the high E string permit this much change? So we could do a couple of things. We could, for example, mark up this saddle here so that we see the actual line on it. It's very difficult to do because this is extremely smooth, and this is made of plastic and hard to mark and write things on it. But if we were to use the thing here, we had a total of, on one side, what did we have? 2.1 and 2.8. So 2.1 on the treble side. Let's find the 2.1. I mean, this isn't how we're going to measure it, but this is just as a sort of guide. So 2.1 is quite a big chunk over here. So if we just make a mark like so, and then on this side we go 2.8, like so. At least this is waterproof marker, permanent marker, so it should stay on long enough to, well, we should be able to see this while we're doing the work. And then I'm going to draw a straight line between the two. Now, recognizing this is a little, expecting this to be a little slope, so we'll just make sure that it has got that little bit of slope in it as we draw it, which I'm pretty certain it there has. So that would be the ultimate maximum intent of the cut. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do a measurement, an actual measurement. Now I'll get a different colour for this. Let's use red for the board. And what I'm going to do is at the, I've done it back front, never mind. At the treble end, I'm going to just locate the measury thing in the high E notch. So 653 is the start measurement for this. 653 is what this actual thing is. And then on the bass side, we do the same. We just try to locate the, it's not actually very easy to feel. Try to locate the low E. 8.39. 8.39. Okay, so 8.39, 653. So if we take a reduction of 105 from this, let's get the calculator again. We can create 2 stages to stand this down at. So if we go clear, we go 6.53 minus the first stage, 1.05 equals 548. So my first stage is 548, and then we take 1.05 from that, minus 1.05, the other half, and we go to 4.43. Those are the two for that one. And then on this side we go 8.39 minus the first 1.4 is 699, and then we minus the second 1.4, which leaves us with 559. So I've got now 4 target readings in 2 stages. So the idea would be to check one, do it halfway, and then check the break angle. And I'll need this thing out, so I'll not put that away. So yeah, we do the reduction first, and then we check the break angle. Now I'm going to have to rearrange this guitar, which is currently excuse me, I'm out of sight, but this guitar, the Gordon Smith, is currently having some strings setting. So is that what's it doing? Yes. That one's tied up. This one's going to sit up here. Let's put it up with Adam's bits and pieces, which live up here. Right, sorry, I'll return now on this and broken wood. Right, so I just need, obviously, to get the guitar out of the way on a peg hanger and out of the way, because what I'm going to need now is the sanding block. A good old-fashioned sanding block. So we kind of know where we are at. We've got 2 stages to do. The important thing about doing this is we want to, there's going to be a slightly uneven amount, so it's going to go heavier on the bass side to begin with. It's never going to be perfect, but we'll do the best. I'll do the best I can, and I need to keep close watch on it with the measury thing. So the first stage I'm going to aim for is from 653 on the treble down to 548 on the treble, and on the bass side 699. So let's start with the bass side. Let's keep it. Let's just put a bit more pressure on the bass side. So I'm going to start cutting down heavier on the bass side. This sandpaper is actually a little bit on the getting worn out stage now, so I need to keep an eye on it. Okay, so now I've got still flat on the bottom, which is good. This is plastic, so it's nothing special as far as saddles are concerned, but it's perfectly adequate for this kind of guitar. Really, the least 639, so we've still got a way to go. Yeah, there's not a major issue about plastic when you're using it for an acoustic saddle. Some people think, you know, the Tusk will always kind of argue that Tusk will improve the tone of your acoustic. I'm never really that convinced or even interested in the tone argument from Graphtec when they talk about Tusk. What I'm interested in is the tuning stability argument, which is more important from my perspective. So I'm drifting a bit off the vertical here, so I need to lean this out a little bit, and I try to keep it in the same angle by moving from side to side rather than moving my hands. So that's sort of okay for now. Let's have a quick look. So we were going 548 on this side, that's the target. 596, we're getting there. On this side we're going down to 743, but 699. So we've got a bit more distance to go, which is absolutely fine. It's better that this does it slowly rather than quickly. But remember, we're only going halfway in this first bit, and then we'll assess it from there on. Of course, if it doesn't work, we can always rebuild this or put another saddle in that's taller. So this has gone off the vertical slightly, so I need to just tip it the way it needs to go a little bit. check on the treble side. I haven't eaten tonight, so I'm going to be rumbling. 557, we're almost there on the treble side, and 683, almost there on the thingy side. So what I'll do now is I will use a smaller block, one with, where's it gone? Typical, there it is, a brass one, just a little bit more on the flat side, or certainly, definitely flat. You see me there? Yes. Okay, so just going to correct, if I can, a little bit of leaningness. Not as much side to side here, but hopefully we should correct the lean a bit better. So tomorrow I'm taking Claire up to Bristol Airport, and she's going up to see the new grandson up in Edinburgh. 555, we're almost there. Yeah, and so I'll be staying here working on guitars. Surprise, surprise. Bless her, she's quite nervous about it because she's not been very well for a long time, general health, and it's quite a drain, or quite a stressful thing for her to go and do any long or significant travel. Okay, I say we're on the mark there, so what I'm going to do is I'm now going to put this back in and have a test. Yeah, so she's absolutely can't wait to go and see the newish baby. So that's great. She'll have a lovely time, and then I'll come back and get stuck into setups. I've got a couple more coming in this week, probably, I should think, and I've got the Gordon Smith here to fix, which is a really interesting challenge. It's the one with the weirdly over beveled fretboard. Anyway, it's a great challenge. Sorry if I'm in the way at the moment. I'm just going to do these up over here. Let's push that across there. Is that right, or is it? Don't quite know where it should be, but we'll see in a minute. Sorry. My finger's caught under there. So the next, well, what we'll have to do is we'll just have to check what the impact is on the playability and the action, but most importantly the break angle over the high E. Now it wasn't bad actually. I mean it was generous to begin with, so we definitely had room to take it down. We might not go much beyond where it is right now, which is why it's good to do it in 2 stages. How's that look now? Well, it looks better for a start. Looks fine. No, it's out of tune a bit. That's the problem when you take the strings off and slack off, you've got quite a bit of stretching and doing up again to get it to stabilize, but it's looking quite good. I mean, it's visible difference. Don't you love it when the notes, the waveforms mesh? Right, so the issue here is what we've got there. I'm gonna suggest we stop where it is, and that's because we've got the right amount, I'd say, the lowest amount of break angle that I'd want. Now actually it's about 10 degrees, so it's better than I've played on other guitars, but I think that's an adequate amount. And I think that the reduction down here is already quite tangible, you know, and I guess the answer, I mean the point of this is that there's a limit to what you can do, and it's always governed by the break angle of the high E string, almost always. That's the governing limiting factor. So, you know, we've gone from the low E measurement of what, 420 to what will now be 2.75. Yeah, we've got about half a mil more we could do, but it's half a mil at the last fret. But I think that's good enough, actually. I don't really want to go any further. It's improved it. It's tangible. Let's pause with a good improvement without overcooking it. If you need to, you can go further by slotting these points here a little bit. Actually, Yamaha's done a good job here, because one of the things that you don't often see, or you often don't know, or many times we don't notice, is if we have the center line of the guitar, then you have the bridge saddle. So let's just draw the bridge. I'll draw two bridges. So let's say the bridge is often like that, and we'll draw two. There aren't ever two bridges on there, but we'll draw two for fun. So on most guitars, you get a saddle that goes like this, right? And then you get a set of pegs that go like that, like that, like that, like that, like that, like that. Sorry, it's not very good. Okay, but you can see there's a divergence of this angle going up there and this angle going up there, right? And the strings, the string holes are vertical, 90 degrees to the center line of the guitar, and you can see that the thing is tilted, the saddle is tilted. But on some clever guitars, like the good old Yamaha in this case, the saddle still, that's terribly drawn, still tilted, but what they do is they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they follow the same line as the tilt. And what that means is, whereas the big problem on the regular one is that the further away this is here, the flatter the angle is, the flatter the break angle over the saddle is. So it's this bit here that limits you on most guitars. And a way to improve that, to allow you to make more reduction without losing the break angle, is to have a smaller gap there, which this Yamaha has done by making sure, not 100%, but much more than many, the two sets are in approximately the same line. They're not perfectly, there's a tiny bit of movement of the pegs that way, but they've by choosing to do that, they've given us a little bit more lowering room than we would have had on any other guitar. So that's very good. That's a plus. A few guitars do it. I can't tell you which ones exactly, but some do, but most don't. But it's a really neat little help. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to now once again slack all the strings off, because now it's time to change the nut, and we have to go through a similar sort of process. And so I'm going to take off. Now in a sense, if I wanted to go much lower with the acoustic, there are a couple of things that we would have to take into account. First one is we'd have to prepare a way to slot, or we slot the bridge so that the strings came out at a more come out closer to the saddle to increase the break angle as much as possible. And the other thing we'd have to do is to we'd probably have to level the frets to make them play. Now that wouldn't be bad in a sense, because these are fairly worn here, but that would add quite a bit of cost. So in the sense that we don't absolutely need to, and even though part of me would like to get rid of these, it would be, you know, another hour and a half of time and money to achieve it. So I don't think it's a good trade. So just before I do the inevitable knocking off of the nut, I'm going to double check that usually it's right, but sometimes you just can't get the right, you just can't get the staff. That's the right size. That's looking good. For once it's looking good. So I'm just going to do a little bit of prep on this. It's got a little lump of spare moulding detritus on the front edge. Now the front edge of these nuts are never dead flat. Now some people might say, well, that's because you can get a bit of glue behind that. I don't know. I think it's just because it's quite hard to mould a flat surface, a dead flat surface, I'm guessing. But so in my book it takes a little bit of flattening up if you want to get it as snug as possible to the front edge. So I'm going to now do that, which was the lightest tap I've ever had to give a nut. Now what I'm hoping is this will give us a fairly instant drop-in fit, which is actually, it's a fraction wider than it needs to be, and we can double check these things. Don't take the visual word for it. We'll check with our machinery. So 4.94, and this will be about just over 5, won't it? Yeah, 501. So it will carry on taking this down a little bit with the fine paper here on the brass block, and we'll basically want to do it until we get to the same as this. So it will fit inside this little lip of finish there, so we want it to sit inside that. So we've got 492, and we got about the same now, but like I said, we want that to fit in the slot, so it sits. Whoops, yeah, I'm taking that up as well. Yeah, it's probably still just a little bit too fat. It's probably better for it to be just that little bit under, because what we don't want is standing up on the lip of this thing. That's spot on. That's perfect. Now, what we also will always want to do at this point in the process is to check the front edge of the nut for glue, and also the nut shelf for glue and other stuff in the way. So let's see if I can give you a close-up for once. Gosh darn it. No, that's not really working. Why is that? Oh, I need to pinch it down. I just seem to have forgotten how anything works at the moment. Up and down. There we are. Right, so I have to now remember not to move the darned neck at all, so you can still see me. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little bit of light scraping because there's glue in there. We just really want to take take it off as much as possible. And the thing about this is that getting the fitting a new nut and finessing it so that the first fret action is perfect takes a lot of precision and care. And it's so precise that if you get it right, and then between getting it right and gluing it in, you do a little bit of a, I don't know, clean up on the face of the nut slot like I'm doing here, it can easily take it down below the target action that we were aiming for, which would be a shame or a problem. Okay, so now the fun part is we're going to, on my board, on my radio, on my blackboard, whiteboard, drawing board, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that off, and I'm going to now draw my nut, because we're going to do a similar process now with a nut. So I always draw it like this. Here's my nut, there's the low E, there's the high E, and we're obviously going to make a measurement from each of those reference points. Now I don't know what that is this second, but I will in a minute. So I take the nut off, I find my 3L, zero it. Very important that you zero it. I'm trying to do this round, yes, like I've got the camera mounted to me now. So first of all, I take a measurement at the treble nut slot, and that's coming in as 809. So that's bog standard 809, and we're going to take one from the point of the low E, but remember the caliper thing can fit in there, so we get a smaller reading, 732. So even though you'd expect it to be a bit higher, it reads lower. Right, that's our start point. Now the next thing I do is I fit this, and a bit of noise I guess, and under, let's actually get all the strings off from my little snags there. So what we're going to do is fit the strings, because the nut is still lightly attached, only lightly attached, I'm going to try and load it up equally both sides, so you can see it's kind of going across to one side or the other depending on where the loading is. Now that actually looks pretty impressive. We might even be on for a drop-in. Now if it isn't a drop-in, it's too low, we may have to shim this new Tusk baby, which is also not at all uncommon. You know, Tusk they don't know how deep the shelf was on this guitar and the year this was made, so there's no way of knowing. So you know, when they make a nut, they make it at hopefully a generic size that will fit most things. But it's entirely possible that you know, when it's fitted, this Yamaha slot or the shelf may just be the wrong size, and so it needs some boosting. But actually I think we're about right. So here we have the standard fit. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to now use the feeler gauges to check the playing action here. And I want 0.4 maximum, probably 0.3 is better if I can get it. And let's check what we've got. Well, it's nearly there. We've got 0.3. I reckon this will be about 0.5 at most, but maybe even 0.4. .45. So I'm going to make a note of that here. So we are the action is 0.45 on the treble side. Right, yeah, the first fret action. And we'll take a check on, probably a bit higher on this side, so we'll go 0.5. Yeah, a little bit more. Let's go 0.6. I would call it 0.65. So 0.65 on the bass side. 0.65. Now, if we wanted 0.3, so here we've got minus 0.15, and on this side we've got minus 0.35 to give us 0.3. Get it? Yay! So if we know that that's what we've got to take down, so we look at this and we go with our calculator again so that we don't mess up. We say 732 is our actual measurement. So 7.32, we minus 0.35, we get 697. So we want to go 732 to 697 on the bass side. And on the top sides, we want to go 809, 09 minus 0.15, 794. And just that's when I know what I'm looking at. So those are my targets, and I can see that what's secondary to this is that I've got one is at least twice as much as the other, so I have to put a bit of pressure bias onto the bass side. So that's how I'm going to get there, and of course this is going to be my friend again. So let's zoom out. Oh, we are out. So now we're going to go back into sanding mode, but obviously we've got to slack off and get the nut off. Fiddly, 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 fiddly. Now, I'm looking at the other end of things up there, knowing that I've got a tiny bit more leeway on that saddle at the other end, and my wickedness is thinking, should I take a little bit more off there? Should I? And you're saying, don't, Sam, do not do it. And you're right, I won't do it. Right, so now I have to go to 794 and 697 with more off the bass side than the treble side. So that's going to be interesting. So more off the bass side than the treble side whilst keeping it flat. And we've got no marks on here because we're not following a line. We are following just the measurements. Okay, so I'm going to start by just pushing with more emphasis on the bass side. Not even risking sort of going from side to side. So from a 0 we're going to 697, from 697, 744. Okay, I'll do some more. Of course, the thing is you've got to keep this square to the front surface square to the bottom. Square to the bottom. Right, we're going 794 on the treble side. 802, not far. 738. 738, 697. So let's keep checking this bass side. Let's look again. So 729, 727 and 802. We got 794, 727, 727. What did I say? 727. 727. So that's 30 on that side and about 10 on that side. So we've still got to work the bass side down a bit more. Okay, we'll just check again. 794. We're on the target for the treble, and we have 713 on the bass side. That's not such a bad thing. We are nearly where we should want it to be. I think I'm going to stop there. Dun, 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 dun. I wonder if you can get sued for humming the Star Trek theme tune. Probably can. I think I might have said the other day, but if I didn't, I was because I have been looking to start up some litter picking in our parish, since I'm a parish councillor. I followed a load of litter picking groups on Facebook, and first of all, I mean, they're incredibly busy and prolific and active. And the other thing is, some of them have called themselves things like the Christchurch Wombles or the something Wombles. Anyway, it sounds cool, except they've had just received letters from Mishkondareya solicitors saying that they will be in touch to talk to them about commercial terms. Probably talked about this before, but wow, that's interesting. So we've got a mismatch between the radius of the nut and is that because isn't it seated in properly? I don't think it quite is. Yeah, with slight mismatch between the nut radius and the guitar radius. So having got it to right on the button for most of the strings, the D and the G look a fraction under where they should be. So it might mean I have to boost this a tiny fraction and then do a small intervention with the D and the G, which is occasionally what you have to do, because that's the other thing you can't be sure of, is actually what the radius of the nut that Tusk or Graphtech is selling, because quite often they don't say. They don't say. So I'm just going to make sure this is on for concluding. Oh, it's gone that way again. Yeah, look at that. I think we'll have to boost it a tiny fraction. Well, there we are, all my best laid plans. See how easy it is to miscalculate because of the difference in the radius. It's perfect at the edges. So basically the nut is flatter than the female of the species is the nut is flatter than the fret, or the nut radius of the slot. So we need to go higher and come back down at the edges. So that means a bit of boosting, and the question I'm going to ask myself is, do you feel lucky, punk? What am I going to boost it with? I could boost it with a whole number of things, but actually it's not that important. Where did that go? Behind there. Oh, we got some good. We got some of the old. What have we got here? We've got some of the old stuff here, which is just a slightly different colour. It will go the same colour in the end. And this is. Yeah, we'll use such a tiny part of it. It won't be an issue. So anyway, I guess I'll keep this running, because you'll get to see or see how long it takes to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put about 1 millimetre of extra material on the bottom and then bring it back to the correct thing. And I should, thinking about it now, I absolutely should have taken my measurement off the height measurement off the D and the G. But that isn't always the one that's wrong, so I should have taken a series of them, which I didn't do. Okay, so what am I looking to do? I am looking to use this material here to just boost this up. So the first thing I'll do is I'll do the gluing, and then I'll cut back to size after the gluing bit. So it's a bit of an odd looking thing. My glue is wearing thin. I've got some other stuff, but this is, yeah, this is going to work. I think this could be about the last gasp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chuck a load of sticky glue on there. It is too sticky by miles. I think it'll work though. And then I'm going to put this little fella on here and line it up in such a way that I can probably press it down. It's not going to stay there for a minute. What I can do is put it on here, like so. What I really want is to just balance it out, but I suppose we need to get some activator on it. So it'll look messy to begin with. Sorry, now out of the way. Come on, activator, do your thing. Yeah, sort of. About right. For some reason it stopped squirting. This is activator, not contact cleaner, thankfully. Right, so basically I've got a chunk of extra stuff on there. I wasn't sure about its togetherness. I could give it a bit of a squeeze in there for a minute, and then when I'm happy about it, basically I get a chance to, I mean, I could have done this. Another way of doing this is to put foil underneath, but believe it or not, I'm currently all out of foil. So now I've glued this, I've got a little bit of sanding to do to bring the face down to meet. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it to size in the lengthways, which hopefully we'll be able to do without it falling to bits. We shall see. If it spits it all over the place, it's the fault of the bandsaw. Thank you. Tad on the noisy side, but it's doing the job. And then I want to just take some of this off with a Dremel thingy, sanding disc, if there is one loitering around, which weirdly enough there should be. So yeah, this is a challenge of getting it right down to the exact measurement, is to overdo it because of the mismatch in the radiuses, and of course it's so tiny, so small an amount, you don't really have any leeway with it, which is always the way. So I'm just going to use this now to grind down this excess. To apart from getting it all over your t-shirt, the idea is we'll just end up eventually with the thinnest little layer on here. And I'll take some more off with the Dremel thing. So, just going to end up with a tiny boosted piece of material under here. We'll obviously end up getting it nice and flat, leveling it out, making sure that it's flush to the front of the nut as well. Not far. So it's funny because if you tried to make a thin piece of some material like this, you wouldn't be able to do it. It would be far too thin to manipulate. But if you put it on as a larger piece to begin with and then work it back carefully, you can do it. And you end up with retained tiny whiff, little thin whiff of material, which you couldn't get any other way really. So as you can see, I'm just sort of bringing it back to the basic target dimension. There's a bit of leftover excess here. We'll get there sooner or later. Well, I made some comments yesterday about Phoebe Waller-Bridge and her performance in the final Indiana Jones movie. I kind of recounted what I'd heard from some critics, which was extremely negative, but Martin made a comment on the video, on my video, which was good because it was a very different perspective in his opinion. She did a good job and they enjoyed it, so it just goes to show that no one person's critique of something or view of something is correct. And of course, having not actually seen the thing, I don't really have a view on it. I have just a second-hand opinion inherited from some other critics who have seen it, and I've latched onto them because they generally make me feel like I would support their general views. So I go, yeah, I think that's what I would think about this film, despite having not seen it. Anyway, so thank you, Martin, for making me reconsider. Okay. So now we're getting close to the thing. Obviously it's still too tall, and I'm going to continue to wear it down this side, and obviously just take care of any sharp edges right now because we don't need them sticking out anywhere. So the main thing now will be this, taking this down vertically and doing it in such a way that we get a nice flat bottom and retain the necessary material to lift this up to the point where we have to do a small adjustment with the nut files. Now the reason, you've probably heard me say times and times before, but the reason I try to avoid using the nut files is just because I'm aiming for the smoothest least friction possible through a nut like this. So we've got the good tusk material, and then I aim to get it to the right first fret action without touching the slots. And in this case I don't think that's going to be possible, because the mismatch between the nut radius and the actual fretboard radius. So we're going to have to correct it, and that's going to require the use of the files in some place. So it should be fine. I mean, you know, it would be a ton easier for me from the very beginning to do all of the height setting here with the nut files. Much easier. But I try to do it the way I've tried to do it in order to retain the factory slots. It's that sort of quest for perfection that sometimes can inhabit you and torment you. Okay, so I'm still not quite flat on this side, but we're nearly there, and there's enough overall. We don't need hardly any lift from this, so I'm just going to keep working this until we've got A, totally flat, and B, almost exactly to the correct height, and then we'll work downwards, or we'll work the slots from the middle outwards. Okay, we're almost flat, but we're still sporting about 0.5 millimeter too much thickness on here, but that's okay. It's a sort of luxury position. So I'm trying to get it down whilst keeping that square bottom, girls. Right, now we're going to get a little lower on the low E, and stick that forward front. Okay, slowly getting there. Now this will be too tall again, but that's okay. Don't need to be there yet. There's that. How are we doing? Nice and square. Madison Square. Now let's just get this back flush. Flush, 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 nearly. Okay. Sorry, I'm not in a very talkative mood at the moment. If I'm being a bit antisocial, do forgive me. It's called concentration to get this back. It's funny that to get this back to where I need it to be, it's like going all the way back to just end up with a minuscule fraction of material back on here. Okay, so let's have a quick look at where this sits. Twang. Oh, that's nice and tall. So the option here is to either work the middle ones to where I want them, which isn't far off actually, but let's see. We've fitted nicely. Okay, so just a quick guess, the middle ones there probably now about 0.4, some 5 even, a bit too high. Yeah. let's just measure what it is. We'll have to go from there and then pick up on the other ones, what needs deepening. Okay, I'm going to call that 0.9. So 0.9. Let's make a thing 0.9 too high on the middle. So we'll call it equal. So 0.9 is the gap. That's 0.6 too high. 0.6 too high in the middle. So we need to work this down a bit more. 0.6 too high in the middle. 0.6 too high in the middle. So what we still need is our reference point. We'll do it from the middle now. So the reference point is 883. That's the middle now. Let's take this and get rid of that. And whatever it is, we're going to take off 0.6 from the middle ones. So let's get rid of all of these measurements. And we're going to go middle and middle, and the top one was 886, and the next one, otherwise known as the D, 853, 853. This one's minus 0.6, and this one's minus 0.6 as well, and that one comes down to 79. Can never work it out simply. I know maths people were good at it, but 8.53 minus 1.6 equals 793. 7.93 is my target for the D string, and for the G the target is 8.86 minus 0.6 equals 826, of course. 8.26 for the G. Okay, so that gives me a clear target. It's 0.5 mil reduction, so we can still, it's so tiny, there's going to be very little left. So let's just lift up the bigger piece. So 8.269, 7.93, straight, even reduction all round. Check it, check it, check it. Yeah. Right, G, we say we're aiming for 8.6, we've got 0.4 more to do. Tiny push frontwards to square it up. Square, good. Square, good. So the amount of replacement material on here now is microscopic. 8.42, 8.4, and we're going for 7.86. So we're almost there. I'm now going to run it along here. Clean it up. And we're going for 8.4 still. And here we're going for 8.18 instead of 7.923. But we are very close. Okay. 8.26, that's good. We're on the mark. 7, perfect. That is spot on. So this means that our strings, our D and G will be correct, and our outer ones will have to be moved, adjusted very slightly. Whoops. Okay, let us place this comfortably. Let us move those. And likewise. Now I want to do this before any gluing down of any strings, so let's hopefully we can get the pressure all balanced out so it won't move while we do it. Okay, that's looking good on the D and the G for sure. Very nice. Now let's look for 0.3 on the D and the G. Spot on. Okay, now we'll get the files out, and oops, that's given away at the bottom. Time for a new bag. Now let's go with the B first. So if we knock off the E, and we'll go with the B, and the B we want to take down to 0.3 of a mil. So I'm pushing, sloping backwards all the time. I want to get it down a little bit, but we also want to make sure it's sloping back. Actually, that's spot on. Let's go to the E. And a similar touch with this one here. These are quite difficult to get used to, these files. They can very easily, when you first use them, they can very easily take you past the point you want to be at, and that can be very frustrating too. I'm nearly there, actually. That's pretty good. Knock off the E, and we'll do the A, and that's going to be the this one, the 36. Jolly good. Right, so once I've done this, it'll be a matter of tidying up, cleaning up the guitar, and getting gluing in the nut, and then getting ready to restring, or getting set to restring. I'm happy with that. So let's first of all just double check, let's get it up to tune, get a feel. Okay. Right, let's put some of these things away. I don't even know if we're still running. We're still running. It's only been an hour and 10 minutes. But we're done on the tricky stuff. As you saw, never a totally simple process. So a bit of a stop-start with the nut, or stop and restart. A touch and go landing or something. And this needs repairing, these little bags. Look, it's sticking out the bottom. So what I'm going to do is just do a little bit of a tidy up. I need that, don't need that, don't need that, that's done. Get things on there, relevant magnets. Sorry, this view is pointless and terrible. Going to get things sorted out. I should just put this here, because then we're going to a party. Fiesta. Do what you're told, please. We're going to sing this song all night long, all night long, all night long, all night long. And we got some of those, some of those, some of those, one of those. Yes, so we'll be just ready now to clean her up a bit, restring or oil the fingerboard. Restring and whoops, sorry, oh god, I'm hopeless bashing things around, and then intonate, and that'll all be good. I've also got to find, for another project, I've got to find a cream tremolo arm tip. I've got a white one, but I need a cream one. I thought it would be cream, the new one I bought from Wilkinson. But it was not to be, or not to be, so it wasn't. So, yeah, got to have a cream one from somewhere. Just going to brush the loose stuff off here, ready to complete. I also done a bit of ordering today with things that I need, but sometimes I end up feeling like a luxury when I buy them. So, for example, frog tape. I've bought 2 rolls of frog tape. I'm so looking forward to it. And I also bought a couple of rolls of, what's that stuff? Copper tape, shielding tape for doing certain cavities. I've got lots of paint, which I can use most of the time, but sometimes it's nice to do certain ones in copper. And I've started out doing one of these in copper, so I need to finish it in copper. All right, let's look down at this thrilling view at this end while I take off the strings and give everything a clean up after that. And we'll glue down the nut lightly. And it might even be better just to see if we can place this on here first. That glue, it's got to be thrown away. I've got loads of little mini-size pots, you know, for single use, and I keep meaning to just use those because it makes a lot more sense than playing with this gel stuff, which is now, I guess it clearly works, but it forms a very sticky mass. So I'm going to put a touch on there, and a touch on the other side, and hope we can stick it down without spiders' webs following me around forever. So I can get a run on here. So typical. Stay there. Stay there. Okay, that's nicely fitted. So what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm just going to tighten these up for a minute. While it glue dries. It's a bit difficult in some ways to make things fit perfectly. That's about right, that's where I want it to be, but it's actually got a whiff of a trillimeter overhang here, which I could probably want to scrape that with a blade or something. Anyway, so that's going to be that. I can take it off in a minute. That should be stuck down enough. I got last bit of cleanish rag to do the clean on this, and I need to buy some more. That's the other thing. So. Righty-ho, and that one and that one. So everything is slacked, nut is no longer under load, so we can just snip these off. Oh, I didn't do much on the G, sorry about that. So we'll get these out of the way, and then I'll show Andy my winding technique again on this guitar for putting on new strings with as little excess material as possible. Now with the with the pegs at this end, what I'm going to do is I'll show you how I usually take them up, and I usually use this old slightly blunted pair of thingies, fret pullers, and I just use them to gently kind of lever or wiggle these around a little bit until they loosen, and then I can pick them out just like so. And there we have it, all out. Okay, so that's the main. All the main stuff done. I guess what I'll try to do is a little bit of a scrape on this nut edge here. The nut is exactly where I want it to be, but that leaves it a tiny fraction overhanging. Now the way I'm going to have to hang this now is to do something. Oh god, I keep knocking everything off. Right, so I'll need a sharp blade, and that's the saddle. I shall not worry about that for a minute. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the blade, bent blade on this, so it's not going to connect with the finish. It's just touching the nut material. Very difficult to get it flush. That's nearly flush. Stay up. But yeah, to take the sort of just a little edge off it so it doesn't stick into the finger. That's almost perfect. The problem is by default, getting something flush means you have to effectively contact the two sides equally, otherwise it won't be flush. So by the definition, that means you end up cutting the finish even if you don't want to. So I'm just now taking this in flush with the finish underlying, and if it takes a tiny whiff of that off, so be it, but it's just effectively rounding it off a little bit. That's much better. Yeah, I can live with that. Okay, so the thing I'm going to do first is I'm going to concentrate on the neck, fingerboard I should say. I'll get a slightly dirtier rag for that because I would half expect it to be mucky. I'll make an eyeball note of where my bridge saddle has fallen because I'm going to need to get that back. So I'm just going to give this a rub over the fingerboard. And the fingerboard is a little bit corroded with age, but you'd expect it for a well played and well enjoyed guitar like this. It's bound to have that kind of corrosion, which comes from finger oils and sweat, which eats into the wood where the fingers press and chews it away. So you get the sunken little grooves. On a guitar like this, it ends up just looking like little pits in the wood, but of course on a maple boarded Strat or something, it ends up with that kind of lovely wear through of the clear finish that people really love to replicate, but it's really difficult to do convincingly because it's well worn through time. You can't really just fake it. People wish they could, but it doesn't work quite like that. Okay, so there's quite a lot of yellow grime coming off the fingerboard. It's going to look dry for a minute, so the next thing I'll do is just give everything else a quick rub down, get rid of dust and obvious finger goo. There's a lot of dings and sort of dented finish which won't polish up unless you were doing a proper kind of light sanding, sand back, buff out sort of job on it, which we're not. So this is not superficial, but it's a light cleaning job as opposed to a reworking of the finish. Relatively light cleaning job, I should say. Hopefully we just get rid of a lot of this sort of baked on grime if we can. And then back of the neck, back of the net. And then over the back, which is actually a pretty good nick anyway. Right, okay, so I'm quite happy with that for cleanliness stakes. So what I'll do now is rescue the saddle, flop it back in. Funny enough, it's got a bit of grime on it that I can't quite clean off, which is annoying me. Could be where I laid the string on the top. Anyway, so we've got our set of new strings, but before we do that, I'll get the oily rag and we'll just put on some fingerboard oil to bring this a bit back to life. Which gives it a nice rich colour, as you can see. There's always that sort of slightly counterintuitive discussion in my head which says, people say, oh, we're rehydrating the fingerboard with oil, and by definition you're not really. You're applying oil, which isn't water, so you're not rehydrating it. And also it's highly debatable whether your fingerboard really does soak in that much oil, since the fingerboard is is an organic wooden structure, cell structure, and not sure that it sort of actively seeks to absorb oil. Oil clearly wets it and makes it look better, and the lovely dark fingerboard colour that we all come to love so much is mostly, people hate to admit it, but it's mostly the result of grease from your fingers coating the board after a long time of playing. So it's a bit of a grim thing. But anyway, we do like that darker look, which is why mostly if I make a neck, I'm going to make one out of ebony. Now, I opened a packet of Oni balls yesterday and they were rusty already, so let's hope this doesn't show the same thing. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to zoom in, and I want to just kind of take you through the way I would string them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to load them up from the far end first, using the same order of the pegs that were there before. So you won't see this bit because it's not that exciting. Get this loaded up, and then we'll be ready for the thing at the other end. That thing, winding on strings. And so far these look okay. They look much cleaner and newer than the ones I opened yesterday for Adam's Les Paul, which was a shame. Same Ernie Ball. We'll wait till we see the plain ones, but these do look a lot cleaner, I've got to say, a lot fresher. Anyway, so as I said on the previous guitar, the secret to stable tuning on your guitar, whether electric or acoustic, is the combination of two things: your condition and the material your nuts are made of, the nut is made of, and the amount of unreleased slack in your strings. And it's literally down to those two components. And if you get both of those right, you will have a guitar that stays in tune. Now, we've taken care of the nut by fitting the best material I know for good tuning stability. That's the Tusk material. And we're going to take care of the slack in the strings by stretching it out manually by hand. So here's how I restring and put on the least amount of material possible onto the pegs for a good grip. So what I do is I pull it all the way through, make sure it's taut, and then I pull back from the first fret and hold it at the second fret. And then I start winding, and I hold on to the held string and keep it taut so it folds over, and I make sure that the loose string, the floppy one, goes underneath this held one, and I'm keeping the held one under a kind of tension all the time. So as the floppy one goes under, I pull it up, and then direct, this time as it comes around, I direct the held string underneath the floppy string, and that makes a sort of self-locking little knot almost, and that's all the string you need on there. So the next one I do is the G, which is gonna it's not so much of a problem on a glued-in nut, but especially on where I've used, if I'd used adjustable, then it's good to do it that way to balance the load and make sure the nut doesn't spring off. I don't know if you can see this still. Can you see it? Yeah, you can. So we're on the left hand side now, so I'm going to start winding. I'm going to hold the held string with my thumb to begin with, and now I've lifted it up and I'm still keeping it under tension as the loose one goes under, keeping the held one under tension, and then I direct the held one underneath the loose one that time round, and it may be goes round once more or not. It's never exact, but it's usually about one loop above and one loop below. And then we'll do the same for the B and the E, and then we'll go back to the D and the A and the E on the other side. So pull taut, pull back 1 fret's worth, which is going to be what we wind round the peg. Held one over the loose one first time round, pull up the loose one, keep the held one under tension, and direct it under for the second time. And that will give us the minimum amount of stored up string around the post that we need to stretch the slack out of, thankfully. Up, tension, under. Up, up, and then the final two. Yeah, the importance of the nut in a great playing guitar is it just can't be overstressed, and it's something that, you know, I think many luthiers and guitar techs, you know, when you read their stuff, they evidently know that it's important, but they never go crazy to ensure that their customer or the prospective customer absolutely knows the transformation it will make when they, if and when they get this bit right. And I think that's such a shame, but I'm not complaining, because the fact that I was, you know, able to kind of convey that to people has has always been in my favour from a business perspective, so I'm not at all complaining about that. So don't be successful in explaining other techs, right? Let me leave it to me. So cut these off really short. I don't want any finger injuries from these bee stings, wasp stings I like to call them. And that's my new set of strings on. So the first thing I want to do now is a bit of a, let's zoom out now, bit of a general stretch, just to make sure things are bedded. And I tend to hold down at this end, press down and make sure, you know, that if something starts to move, like the peg starts to try and come up, or the string comes up under the ball, comes up under the peg, then I'm sort of catching it and nothing's going to come flying off. So that's my first, hey, like that, thank you. So that actually, it wasn't seated right from the first. So we're going to end up with a bit more on this high E than the others, but that's not the end of the world. It's not going to do it any harm. We'll still get it to stretch out. But that's sometimes what can happen with those peggy things. Right. So first thing we're going to want to do is to tune it up as always. Okay, so we then grab our strings between thumb and forefinger like we did on the Les Paul, and we press and stretch as we go, and switch strings. And I hear a bit of creak down there as things settle in. Pressing between thumb and forefinger, and the aim is to do this until everything's settled and you can't detune the strings any further, because once you've reached that point it really will reward you by staying in tune for a long period of time, and it will be a pleasure to get into tune. You really do know, we all know the guitars that just miraculously seem to go into tune when we pick them up. You know, we tweak them a tiny bit, they go into tune, there's no fight, they just seem to want to get into tune. And sorry about that, one of those moments. Just seem to want to go into tune. And my ambition, or my goal, is to make sure your guitar becomes one of those. When you bring it to me, there's no reason why it shouldn't become one of those, and that's the great fun of it. Because you know, when you get a guitar that finally stays and plays and stays and plays in tune, you'll suddenly realize you're reaching for it all the time. It's the one you want to pick up and play because it's just so reliably in tune and rewards you with staying in tune without all that worry and constant fiddling and what, can't quite get it in tune, going back to the tuning, the headstock tuner and all of that. Don't want that. Very close. I think we're so close to tuning stability. We'll replace the truss rod cover and we'll call it a day. A Sunday, in fact. So happy with that. A little bit of run around, as is often expected, requiring a bit of extra work on the nut. But that was again my fault for assuming that the radius matched, and of course Graphtec, the makers of Tusk, just simply cannot guarantee that the radius that they make their nuts to will fit your guitar, because you know, there's even a difference often between what Yamaha has on its equipment that registers as, let's say, 12-inch or 9.5 or whatever, and the difference between that and what Tusk has when it's making the nuts. So wow. Love it. Thank you for watching. Yeah, time to go home. Tomorrow, airport with Claire, and I'll see you in my bachelor workshop during the week. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye for now.